Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Neutron Perspectives, and today we're going to be discussing episode 29 of The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, MaternoTron Knows Best / Send in the Clones. So, how does MaternoTron Knows Best start out? Well, Judy wants to go on vacation. Yeah, she's feeling underappreciated in the Neutron household as she goes to extravagant lengths to keep her men happy, and they clearly don't give a shit about her. It's exemplified by her making Jimmy and Hugh elaborate dishes that are meant to look like and evoke imagery that they themselves would personally enjoy, and all she wants is a simple sandwich. And yet when she has to go deal with this machine that Jimmy invented where he hooked up a cuckoo clock to an atomic-powered toilet, don't ask, even I don't know, they, instead of eating the elaborate dishes that Judy prepared for them, they eat her fucking sandwich. Honestly, I'd be pissed if I was in her shoes too. Not helped by the fact that Jimmy and Hugh decide to go off and do their own things and nobody walks Goddard, leaving Judy to have to not only walk the dog, but also pick up after him. As such, Judy decides, fuck this noise, I need a break, as she decides to take a week-long vacation at a spa retreat. And, well, the day she leaves, she gives Jimmy and Hugh a list of all the chores she does to keep the house running, and tells them that they're going to have to handle them themselves. However, while Jimmy and Hugh are shocked by Judy's departure, at the same time they're a little happy, because for an entire week, they won't have Judy breathing down their necks telling them what they can and cannot do. So, the boys just think that they have an entire week to do whatever the hell they want, though they realize they have to get the chores done. However, they find they're not good at the chores, which I find weird considering that Jimmy has actually created inventions to do the chores around the house, but whatever. Jimmy and Hugh are not good at them. As such, Jimmy decides to make another invention to do the chores around the house. In this case, he creates the titular MaternoTron, which is a robot designed after Judy whose main priority is to basically pamper, protect, and just do everything around the house for Jimmy and Hugh, while they just spend their days lounging and doing whatever the hell they want. As such, Jimmy turns the MaternoTron on, and at first, she seems to be doing well, as she walks Goddard, mows the lawn, does all the chores around the house, and Jimmy and Hugh just sit on their asses in the living room watching TV as their backsides continue growing. However, when dinner time comes around, Jimmy orders the MaternoTron to shut down until the next mealtime, but the MaternoTron says, "Oh, I'm sorry, but a mother's work is never done." As such, Jimmy realizes, oh yeah, that's the nurture, protect, and pampering protocols, and so he tries to implement an override, only for the MaternoTron to go, "Don't use that tone with me, young man." And yeah, it turns out that Jimmy kinda effed up again. It turns out he set the autonomy levels in this thing a little too high, so now it actually thinks it's Judy. That's right, he gave it too much free will. You'd think he would have learned his lesson with all the other inventions who gained sentience and turned rogue, but whatever. Unfortunately, though, the MaternoTron does not have the same bits of motherly love that Judy does, because when it presents dinner to Jimmy and Hugh, it's these disgusting bowls of garbage, I'm just going to call it, that's supposed to be full of protein, but are just not good to eat. And on top of that, while the MaternoTron tries shoving this shit down Jimmy and Hugh's throats, it ends up forcing them into the bath, and based on the fact that after the bath their skin is all red and they look like they're shivering in fear, it wasn't a very pleasant bath. As such, Jimmy and Hugh realize they're kind of screwed, but Jimmy thinks that he can fix this, because in his lab there is an override remote that he left lying on a desk, or bench, whatever. And point is, if he can get to the lab and get it, he can just manually shut the MaternoTron down. Unfortunately, she ain't letting Jimmy out of the house. That's not even a joke. Like, basically, every time Jimmy tries to leave the house, she just blocks his path. Like, when he tries to go into the lab, she tells him to go to his room, and likewise, Hugh doesn't get a moment alone because the MaternoTron enters wife mode because she's been neglecting her wifely duties, which apparently is just nagging Hugh and doing all the things that wives want to do with their husbands, including rubbing her feet. Oh, actually, what I kind of love, too, is that it looks like she's leaning in to go for sex, and then she does all the wifely stuff. That's just great. In the meantime, Jimmy's attempts to get to the lab continue not bearing fruit, as well. While he tries to send Carl and Sheen into the lab, they're actually headed off by the MaternoTron, who says they can't go into the lab until they fill out this 100-page quiz on Jimmy, or 1,000-page quiz. I don't know, it's a lot of paper stacked on top of each other. And while Jimmy and Hugh try to sneak out of the house under the pretense of going out to play a game of catch, the MaternoTron ends up putting the house on lockdown because, well, the Civil War was held out there. The guys can't go out there. And so she ties them to chairs and basically makes them continue drinking her slop. However, Judy's mothering senses begin tingling while she's at the spa, and realizing her boys are in danger, she runs back to the house and kicks the door down, ready to take on the MaternoTron. And while at first the MaternoTron overpowers her, all it takes is the MaternoTron to start scolding Jimmy with the scolding finger, and that basically gives Judy enough of a bit of oomph to break out of her bonds and get ready to start whooping the MaternoTron's ass. And while Jimmy does tell Judy to break into his lab and get their manual override, well, Judy's got her own arsenal of fighting gear, and she goes into her cleaning closet, pulls out a bunch of cleaning implements that the MaternoTron breaks, only for Judy to pull out apparently a ray gun, or specifically a matter disintegrator. I think that's what it was. Point is, it's a laser gun that Judy apparently appropriated from Jimmy for those extra hard-to-reach places. At which point, she turns on the MaternoTron and fries her circuitry to the point where she completely shuts down. So hey, everything's all well and good, right? Well, you see, the thing is, Judy left her spa retreat 2 days in, so she's still got 3 days left of pampering to go through, and she's a little peeved that Jimmy and Hugh replaced her with a robot. So, you know, she basically spends the next 3 days making her men pamper on her, so that as a form of punishment / to get in her spa time. Also, Carl and Sheen are still outside doing the quiz because no one told them that MaternoTron's been taken care of, so what do you know? But anyway, that's one half of the episode. What about sending the clones? What's going on is that Neptune and Pluto are nearing each other, and their proximity is causing a bevy of ice crystals to form around both the planets. And Jimmy wants to take advantage of this union because such a aligning of these two planets happens once every 2,000 years. And those ice crystals are so premium that you can use them to basically create the perfect ice cream. Cold enough that they don't melt, but not too cold that they will give you a brain freeze. So Jimmy wants to take immediate advantage of that. Unfortunately, as he gets his rocket ready to blast off into space, he gets headed out by his mom, who gives him a list of chores that she wants him to do. As such, Jimmy does not want to do these chores because, well, this, again, meeting on these two planets happens once every 2,000 years. If he misses it, he misses it. So he wants to take advantage of it while he can. And as such, after Goddard lists several options for Jimmy, he comes to the conclusion that he'll just clone himself and have the clones do the chores. As such, since Jimmy is in a hurry, he doesn't set any specifics for the cloning. As we see, the cloning tech are those teleporter pods that we saw in one episode. And as Jimmy gets into one and Goddard gets everything going, Jimmy is cloned as he creates 6 other Jimmy Neutrons. However, because Jimmy was in such a rush to make the clones, they're not all perfect clones. I mean, biologically speaking, they are Jimmy. They all look like Jimmy, and based on the way some of them talk, they have inherited Jimmy's genius and his memories. But personality-wise, all of them are different. There's a happy Jimmy who loves to see the bright side of everything. There's a depressed Jimmy who thinks life is pointless and not worth living. There's a French Jimmy who thinks that everything is so romantic and wants to seduce the love of his life, Cindy Vortex. There's a Jimmy Neutron who's basically a clown, complete with poofy clown hair and everything. There's a cool Jimmy Neutron who wants to show off the moves. And an evil Jimmy Neutron who thinks he can create some big mischief with what he sees in the lab. However, while Jimmy's a little worried by each of the clones' different dispositions, well, he really just wants to get out and get those ice crystals, so he gives the clones a list of his chores, and he blasts off, leaving the clones to do his work. And Jimmy's content thinking that everything's all settled up. He gets the ice crystals, comes back home thinking all of his chores are taken care of, only to see a crowd of people outside his house wanting to have a word with Jimmy. Why? Because the clones apparently caused a bit of mayhem. The happy clone went to go hang out with Jimmy's grandma, and apparently made her smile so wide her teeth fell out, which I don't really think is a nuisance. The sad Jimmy, while delivering a letter, ran into Carl and basically made him feel depressed about them being dust in the wind. The French Jimmy wound up delivering a book to Cindy's mother and basically played her a loving serenade that Cindy was so wooed by that she fainted, and out of embarrassment she says that Jimmy said things to her that can't be repeated in pleasant company. The funny Jimmy went to go hang out with Sheen and basically made a bunch of jokes about Ultralord, which pissed Sheen off something fierce. I'm trying to think who else was there. The cool Jimmy wound up hanging out with Nick and broke his skateboard while showing off his awesome moves. And evil Jimmy has just spent all day pranking people with one guy coming up to him and evil Jimmy offering a pie, and then he smacks it in his face, which at the time the guy didn't see I have a problem with, but now he seems to already. So, and he hasn't cleaned the pie off. It's like he spends the rest of the episode with pie on his face. Like, Clean that off, dude. As such, Jimmy realizes that his clones have caused too much problems, so he decides that he needs to go get his clones and explain everything. However, when he does eventually meet up with the clones, who have all coalesced in Retroville, he finds that he's one clone short, as the evil clone has not met up with the rest of them yet. As such, Jimmy and his clones decide to try and find where Jimmy's evil clone is, and they do eventually find him, as he's still in the middle of pranking people, with his latest prank being switching the signs around on the boys and girls bathrooms and causing a guy to walk into a woman's bathroom while there's an old lady inside. And while Jimmy tries to get evil Jimmy to come with him, well, evil Jimmy doesn't want to go with him, for you see, Jimmy wants to declone him, i.e. kill him, and evil Jimmy doesn't want to be decloned. He likes existing. He likes being out in the world, and he's not going to let some kid. He's not going to let his goody two shoes other self basically convince him to go away. As such, after throwing a garbage can at all the Jimmys, the evil Jimmy makes a run for it, and while the other Jimmys try catching up to him, evil Jimmy further confuses them by styling his hair to look like regular Jimmy, and then pretending to be regular Jimmy by changing his voice. And unfortunately, all the other clones, despite all being clones of a boy genius, are apparently all dumb as rocks. Well, to be fair, they all have the EQ of a child, so what do I know? Point is, though, evil Jimmy begins swaying them to his side and convincing them that the good Jimmy is actually the evil clone pretending to be good, and Jimmy realizes that he's quickly losing control of the situation, and, well, one brain blast later, he realizes what he has to do to take care of everything. He has to sacrifice the ice crystals, as he puts them into Goddard's mouth and has Goddard shoot out a blast of cold so great that it freezes all of the clones in place, and yeah, it effectively kills them. Well, most of them. Once again, the evil clone managed to make the slip, and while Jimmy's wondering where he went, well, the evil clone appears behind Jimmy, having swiped his jetpack, saying that, hey, you don't mind if I borrow this? We're practically family, right? Got a blast. At which point, he flies off. And as such, the angry mob from earlier does catch up with Jimmy, and Jimmy then spends the next 4 hours explaining what happened, which everyone believes, though they want assurance that all the clones have been taken care of, which Jimmy immediately avoids the topic by offering pie, only for evil Jimmy to fly in and laugh at his good self's face, and for the angry mob to immediately turn on Jimmy because they really are just that pissed. But yeah, that's where the episode ends. So, my thoughts on these two episodes. MaternoTron Knows Best. Honest to God, it's a weird episode. Not a bad weird, but still definitely weird. It's just kind of funny and nice, and again, and it is kind of a typical sitcom mom's underappreciated style story, and it's not a bad one. I do kind of like how it goes. I admit it does feel a little out of character for Jimmy and Hugh to just disregard everything Judy does for them, especially in other episodes. She seems to carry her own weight, and Jimmy and Hugh seem to appreciate her fine. But considering the self-contained format of the show, I'm just gonna let it slide. If I'm gonna bring up every little continuity error from episode to episode regarding the characters, we'd be here all day. Now, if it's major character continuity breaks, that'll have a problem with. Still looking at you, Empire Strikes Back. I still don't like you. But with that said, I don't mind it in the episode. With that, although I will give Jimmy and Hugh some crap. She makes these guys these elaborate dishes for them. She makes Hugh a choo-choo train out of macaroni and broccoli, and for Jimmy, she makes him some food. She makes him meatloaf or roast beef, whatever, and the potatoes in the shape of Albert Einstein. And they just eat the sandwich, and they just eat a simple sandwich that she made for herself. Oh, that's all she wanted, a fucking sandwich, and they couldn't even let her have that. They don't even touch the food she made for them. They don't even acknowledge her when she presents them to them. Hugh is just reading to a book of duck facts while Jimmy is just doing his own calculations. Like, I get it, the mom does a lot in the house, but fuck you guys. At least say thank you, okay? Whatever. So whatever. It's for comedic gag. And Jimmy and Hugh get their comeuppance throughout the episode, and I do kind of like that. The episode's format does typically go the way you'd expect in Jimmy Neutron episode, i.e., things go wrong, Jimmy has to find a way to fix it. Although in this case, it is not Jimmy that ends up fixing it. It's Judy who ends up fixing it, as Jimmy's the one that f's up by creating a robot that looks like Judy and setting her parameters so high that she thinks she is the real Judy. But at the very least, I do just kind of like seeing the MaternoTron in action. Like, it's just so funny how overprotective she is. Like, technically speaking, when you look at everything she does, she's not breaking her programming. She was programmed to pamper, to pamper and protect Jimmy and Hugh, and that's exactly what she's doing. It's just that she's overprotective. She basically, she thinks that she has to protect them from every little thing. Think of it like, I think it was a Disney Channel movie about a smart house that became autonomous and basically developed so much of a free will that it believed it was the maternal figure in a family, to the point where it actually locked the family inside the house so that they wouldn't get hurt. Think of it like that, only instead of the robot learning its lesson and realizing it's being too overprotective, the robot double, triples, and quadruples down. And I kind of like seeing that throughout the episode. And by the end of the episode, what I love is that, again, Jimmy and Hugh do get their comeuppance, as because of how protected the MaternoTron is, Jimmy cannot get back to his lab, and any attempts to do it just result in the MaternoTron blocking the path, figuratively and literally. And so ultimately, it's Judy who saves the day. They're showcasing that, yeah, she still loves her family, as even when she was at the spa, she was still thinking about Jimmy and Hugh and still cared about them, showcasing that they are still a major part of her life, but the instant that they are in any form of danger, she drops what she's doing and goes to protect them. Yeah, she still wants to be appreciated at the end of the day, and she did not like that she was basically replaced by a robot in her absence, but at the very least, the fact that she still wants to protect her family no matter what happens is still it's still sweet, and I love that. It's just nice, and she's just kind of a badass. It's just really nice, and I love it. And seeing her basically just get ready to go complete just to getting tongue-tied. The fact that she's ready to kick the ass of the MaternoTron with no second thoughts just showcases how much she loves and appreciates her family and the lengths she's going to go to keep them safe. It's great. I love it. The MaternoTron is some nice comeuppance. Honestly, the episode's just enjoyable. It's weird, but it's enjoyable. It's fun seeing Jimmy and Hugh get their comeuppance in the episode. We got some good gags of the MaternoTron and Jimmy and Hugh being lazy dumbasses. I love seeing Judy miss her family while at the same time finding ways to basically let her family know that they need to appreciate her more. And ultimately, at the end of the episode, I think is a good compromise, with Jimmy and Hugh getting their proper comeuppance, while Judy is able to get rid of the robot that tried taking her spot, and likewise is able to get her the remainder of her spa week. Although again, no one goes out to tell Carl and she that they don't have to do the test anymore. So what do I know? As for sending the clones, well, I like a good clone episode. Believe it or not, it's my love of the genre of cloning a character that led me to liking multiverse stories. Because again, I like it when you take a character and basically double them, showcasing how someone can be when there's multiple versions of a person running around. And the Jimmy clone kind of scratched that itch for me. Like I said, all of them are Jimmy, but they're all different variations of Jimmy. Again, that's obviously just for comedic effect, because the clones are ultimately just here to create mischief and just be fun and weird, and quite frankly, I think they succeed in that job. I like that they just go around Retroville with their own brands of chaos, and while I believe that some people in that angry mob were not very justified in wanting to have Jimmy's head on a pike, at the same time, it's just kind of fun seeing the clones cause all these problems for Jimmy by their mere existence and by claiming to be Jimmy Neutron. I liked seeing the happy clone going out to Jimmy's grandma. I liked seeing the sad clone being so depressed. I liked seeing the cool clone show up Nick and break his skateboard. I liked the happy clone, and I liked the comedic clone and all the jokes he made. I liked the French clone and how it basically serenaded Cindy, and to showcase how much he loved Cindy, he sang a serenade about how he loved her more than Einstein's theory of relativity. And well, considering how much Jimmy loves science, that's a hefty compliment right there. But I think, of course, the standout is, well, the evil Jimmy. The evil Jimmy, unfortunately, doesn't really have a lot of time to shine this episode, much like how the nanobots didn't have a lot of time to shine in their initial episode. But again, like the nanobots, he does leave enough there that you do want to see more of him. And yes, like with the nanobots, evil Jimmy does come back in a later episode. Basically, evil Jimmy is just Jimmy without the morals, and that's just the best way to describe it. Now, we've seen that Jimmy can be a bit of an impetuous child, how, despite his high IQ, he's still a kid and thinks the way most kids would. It's why in the last segment he created the MaternoTron. He was a lazy boy who didn't want to do all the chores his mom left out for him, so he he basically just outsourced the job to a robot. So, but here it's a similar case. He doesn't want to do all those chores, outsource it to fucking clones. And because he was in such a hurry, he didn't bother to try and make the clones perfect, hence their different dispositions. But the thing is, what keeps Jimmy from basically crossing that line and being officially a bad guy is that at the end of the day, he is a good kid. Yeah, he'll make mistakes. He'll try to cover them up sometimes, but he does genuinely want to do right by people. And when push comes to shove, he's ready to help. He's ready to help out whenever the world needs him. It's why he became a spy it's why he became a spy several episodes ago. It's why he goes off. It's why he faces various villains. It's why in the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour he stayed to protect Fairy World, despite the fact that he thought that everyone there was a computer program. And Jimmy, at the end of the day, is a good kid, and while he will still use his genius to, maybe prank some people if he thinks that they deserve it, or likewise maybe help his friends cheat a little bit, like in last week, or like in the episode we saw 2 weeks ago with Sheen and his big brain. But at the same time, Jimmy at the end of the day does have a good head on his shoulders and does want to do the right thing. Evil Jimmy doesn't give a shit about that. Evil Jimmy is Jimmy if he just decided, fuck it, I'm gonna do whatever I want. And that's just kind of what we see with him. Throughout the episode, he still acts like a kid. He pulls pranks on people and laughs at the chaos, like offering a guy pie and then throwing it in his face, and then just kind of giving a chuckle that, you can't beat the classics. Or swapping the boys and girls' signs on bathrooms. Again, these are simple pranks, but they're not things that you would typically see Jimmy do. If Jimmy was to prank someone, it would be something more elaborate, and at the very least something that would give someone a laugh, but usually if it's at someone's expense, it's usually someone he's already got a beef with. Whereas Evil Jimmy's just sowing chaos because he wants to see chaos. And I kind of like that, especially considering just how little he gives a shit about everybody else in the situation. And I like that contrast. And the thing is, like I said, the clones all do have Jimmy's intelligence. We saw that with a French clone when he did Serenade to Cindy and actually did make an analogy that Jimmy would. But Evil Jimmy's a similar case. Now, going back to the idea that he is basically Jimmy if he didn't have all of Jimmy's pesky little morals, well, imagine Jimmy's already kid-like mindset in the body of a child who basically just thinks, I can do whatever I want. Who's going to stop me? It's actually a pretty dangerous idea, and we do see that a little bit in the episode, like how he's able to outsmart the clones by pretending to be his good counterpart, or how he evaded the ice crystals, most likely seeing what Jimmy was getting ready to do and getting out of there as soon as he could, and then flying away on the jetpack and laughing in Jimmy's face. Again, I like that. The whole thing with Evil Jimmy is just that he's Jimmy without the morals, and I find that entertaining. As not only is he an amusing character, but he's a good foil for Jimmy, as he can match Jimmy in various ways because he is Jimmy. He knows Jimmy. He has all his memories. He has his level of genius. Hell, going back to the fact that we'll see him in a future episode, in a later episode we saw he build his own rocket. So again, clearly he is just as handy capable as our Jimmy is. Again, he just really does not give a shit about anybody and just wants to do whatever he wants. And clearly the only thing holding him back is the fact that, like regular Jimmy, he has the EQ of a child, so he doesn't have any global takeover the world. He doesn't have a global takeover the world agenda yet. But that's for later episodes. For now, the episode itself is just fine. It's enjoyable. Like I said, it's fun seeing all the different clones in their different dispositions. I like seeing their different brands of chaos as they go throughout Retroville. I like seeing them work off of each other and with Jimmy. And likewise, the episode introduces Evil Jimmy, who I think is just a fun time overall. So, yeah, overall, I think these 2 episodes are good. And MaternoTron Knows Best is a weird episode, but an enjoyable one. That definitely gives proper karma to the people who deserve it. And likewise, Send in the Clones, amusing time, fun seeing all the different Jimmy clones, and it ends on a funny note, especially with Evil Jimmy getting away. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, I'm Samuel Johnson, and I hope to see you next week. Take care.